if you have holes in your aura because of all of these emotions, you haven't done the inner healing work, and or you have a soul contract to explore this, like I did, then they will attach to you. And so you may have stuck in your aura people, beings, thought forms of all kinds and all ranges. And yes, it can be horrendous, but also it's horrendous because that energy is still stored there. No matter how dark a being is, whether it be a black magician or a demon or anything, inside of that is the white light.
Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Shifting Dimensions podcast. I'm your host, Jumi Moses, and thank you so much for tuning back into the show. Happy New Year. This is the very first episode of the new year, and I'm excited to have you guys here with me. I have the pleasure of speaking with today Katische Haberfield. She is a spirit releasement therapist, past life regression therapist, medium, author, and poet. She helps her clients free themselves from the limiting beliefs and constraints that are holding them back. She also takes her clients with the assistance of the angels and archangels into other lifetimes here on Earth and other dimensions, frequencies, and planets, and really works to help them identify moments of profound joy, offering unique insights into the nature of happiness. And I'm excited to have Katische here today because I really want to speak to her about her work in spirit releasement therapy and how she works with her clients to find their soul's happiest moments. So, Katische, welcome to Shifting Dimensions. It's such a pleasure to have you here on the show.
Thank you so much, Jimmy, for having me. I'm so pleased to be here today.
Yes, thank you. Okay, so I want to start off with, asking you the question of what led you down the path of becoming a spirit releasement therapist?
Good question. And I think it's the same answer that anybody else would answer: life experience and unanswered questions. So for me, it was particularly about understanding both positive and negative emotions to start with, and why some people, including myself, can sometimes be surrounded by what feels like a cloud of darkness or a cloud of negative emotions, and how sometimes you can affirm your butt off, so to speak, and put all the positive posters around you and do all the positive things that everybody tells you, visualize and try to change your circumstances simply by your thoughts and outlook alone. And sometimes it doesn't work. And so I went down a rabbit hole that said, why? What am I doing wrong? Is there something wrong with me? What do I need to understand about myself? Who can help me? And why does everybody else seem to have this rosy, glorious, optimistic view of life? And why does that really frustrate, annoy, and bother me? Why do I feel like going every time somebody's like, oh, this rosy, joyous, oh, it'll be wonderful, oh, I'll just manifest a Porsche and it happens, or whatever. And I'm like, like, okay, right, I tried that, tick, I've done that course, tick, I've done that course, I've read that book, I'm like the world's best student, and nope, still this cloud of negativity over me. So that's sort of how I started into it, and trying to understand energy and the science behind it as well. So there's a very large period of time before I got into spirit releasement therapy, which I would just say is called the study period. So, in my 30s, a little bit of the 20s, 40s, so I'm almost 50. And I would read everything that I could grab my hands on, firstly about affirmations and positive things, the Louise Hay world. And then secondly, I was doing a lot of stuff trying to understand Tony Robbins' world and how you can just change your state of being immediately. And I was like, yeah, so that works for about 2 minutes. But, I love Tony. I read everything's written. I've highlighted everything. It's not working. Okay. And then I started delving into Deepak Chopra's world, and Dr. Wayne Dyer's world, and understanding where they delved into the intersection of science and spirituality to understand quantum physics, quantum mechanics, all of the energy behind it. And I was like, okay, all right. So I understand that. I never did science at school, never did science at uni, so I'm not scientific. But all right, I understand the energy side of that. and I was drawn to working with essential oils. And essential oils basically is a very good gateway into understanding energy, because you understand the olfactory system. So what you're doing is you're understanding how an aroma works with your olfactory and limbic system, and that is where you process emotions and moods in your physical body. And so I spent quite a few years understanding how I could look at and change my emotions and the emotions of people around me subtly by understanding the energetic properties of plants, and how our emotions work. And so again, I could make some good changes temporarily with emotions and moods. Like I learned very quickly if, a child was tantering, what oils to put on to subtly help them and to calm myself and not stay in that funk. So I was able to move from, being in a bad mood for a while, or an hour all day or a week or whatever, to few minutes, half an hour or whatever it is. So that was a big shift and change. And then I was like, yeah, but this isn't working at a long-term level. I'm still not seeing the changes that I want to see in myself and the world. And so I started studying energy in the form of crystal singing bowls. So I went and did a certification in sound healing. And that's when I started to get really profound changes, because, crystal singing bowls, you're dealing with quartz, and you're dealing with the very large energetic changes that you can create in yourself and others through shifting the energy through a very thick, solid piece of crystal, basically, that's in your house. And this is where it kind of gets complicated, because you can't do spirit releasement therapy in my opinion, without having a good understanding of past life regression therapy, of hypnotherapy, and of energy and scientific energetics, because it's all interrelated. So you need to understand all of the energy bodies that we have. You need to also understand that we are continuing energy. You need to understand that your mind is not inside your brain, and that your thoughts continue on. You are a personality in this incarnation who has experiences, who has emotions, who has regrets, who has guilt feelings. And because you have always continued on, there are other versions of you that have the same. And what this has to do with spirit releasement therapy is that when we don't process and clear emotions and behaviors and thoughts and feelings at a cellular level, they remain stuck in the body, which internalizes into the DNA. And so it gets passed down to other generations. But also when you go to the end of your life and you go to the light, a lot of our experiences and emotions can hold us back from crossing over. And also, if we don't work through what we think is our concept of karma, which is a mental construct, karma, it's literally you trying to learn lessons over and over and over again based upon presenting emotions, behaviors, opinions, and thoughts and interactions with other human beings. So these emotions can get stuck in you and physically manifest as dis-ease, but also how you vibrate, which is what your energy is, can attract other energy and beings that are around you. So like presents like. So my fundamental principal problem was, I think I'm a good human being, but I'm experiencing negative thoughts, negative circumstances, continually going through shitty relationships, which I discovered were just karmic. And I was just having a good old go at finally resolving some issues from other lifetimes. But understanding that it's not me that's fundamentally a bad person. It's just that I have some experiences that were drawing certain types of energy and people towards me because I had unresolved issues from other lifetimes, or I hadn't released emotions from this lifetime. So, and it's to understand that when we're talking about spirit releasement therapy, we have to go into the energy field. So I always look at the overall soul level, so the quantum soul level, not the quantum energy field of the entire multiverse, your soul, and say, where can I identify this stuck energy? Is it belonging to the soul and all the different incarnations, or is it outside forces that you encountered in different incarnations? and how can we release that, and what importantly are the lessons that we need to know in order to be able to release it. So the work that I do is not exorcism. So I'm not affiliated with a religious association. I haven't been through exorcist training. I'm not a priest. I'm not a representative of a church. I have worked with people who have been through all of the official stuff that a church may do with an exorcist. But basically, the way I see it is, from my philosophy and the way that I was taught, um, there is a causality as to what you're experiencing. And so you may have stuck in your aura people, beings, thought forms of all kinds and all ranges. And yes, it can be horrendous, but also it's horrendous because that energy is still stored there. All of them would rather be elsewhere, and all of them contain the divine white light that we all have. And they're in that divine white light, no matter how dark a being is, whether it be a black magician or a demon or anything, inside of that is the white light. And when you can access for the being and for yourself the knowledge that is in there, then you will feel grateful for the experience of having interacted with that being, because there's something about you, yourself, and your soul that you needed to know, unlock, and release. Otherwise, you wouldn't have attracted that energy. So I don't say you want to follow or worship the dark wisdom. What you want to do is you want to be grateful and interact to find the light within, so that you can understand what the fear or what the dark emotional energy is based upon, so that they then can release their own energy and go to the light, because they have, in my opinion, in my experience, been contracted or agreed to work with you in this lifetime or the other lifetimes to help you unlock that wisdom and that knowledge. But it's just that you had maybe a plethora of repeating cycles in a particular behavior, emotion, thought, or feeling over many lifetimes. And so their energy is stuck with yours. It's, it goes with entanglement theory. So, we are all energy. And so therefore, we are entangled, and we work to freeing those entanglements, so that those entanglements aren't negative entanglements, they are positive entanglements. And so we radiate and vibrate and be love, kindness, and joy. And by allowing ourselves to study the energy within us and the attachments and the beings that are surrounding us, and understand how we take responsibility for the root cause of that, whether in this lifetime or another, we give ourselves permission to live our best lives. But we also show people that you can move out of these patterns, and you can show them simple tools, or they can move towards that for their own selves, so that they can gain their lessons. So it's that principle of demonstrating, hey, I'm not a perfect human being, neither are you. I don't expect you to. This is the stuff that I've gone through. How about you? Let's all move towards understanding that we don't need to be these luminescent bulb beings of pink, bubbly, happy, frothy bubble tea light, but we have to be real beings with all different shades of emotions. But we don't need to get stuck in one. So that's a very long answer. I hope that sort of gives you, it's a complicated question.
Yes, it is a complicated question, and I think you did a great job with trying to, not even trying to, I think you did a great job with kind of synthesizing what it really means to be a spirit releasement therapy and the spirit part of it, right? Which I even want to dive a little bit deeper into. But before I even do that, I want to kind of do a recap of everything you pretty much said. And I pulled this quote from your website where you said, spirit releasement therapy is a way of examining the inexplicable. Sometimes, no matter how hard we try, we cannot improve our mindset, heal our emotions, or transcend the circumstances of our life. Some may call this karma. However, sometimes our limiting beliefs are so deep that we create negative thought forms, energies, and constructs that act as roadblocks. when we create enough negative energy, we can co-create and entangle ourselves with negative entities and beings with malicious intents, right? And I just think that kind of really captures what you've just been explaining. And I want to get a little bit deeper. And part of the reason why I wanted to take time to focus on this is because I want to talk about the entity attachments, right? Because I think a lot of people are familiar with entity attachments, and you mentioned exorcisms and, those type of attachments. But I think a lot of people don't talk enough about the thought forms that are kind of this, like you talked about, this negative cloud that ends up following people, that they're not aware. It's not an entity in the way we think of like black magicians or perhaps a ghost or something, but it is an energy form that you have kind of accumulated because of maybe dark things that you've experienced and you have not been able to let go of. So I want to talk about that a little bit more. Those negative thought forms. And I know you mentioned it briefly in your explanation, but what are some of the most common emotions that kind of give way to those negative thought form attachments?
Fear. Fear is the
Mm,
number one. And fear is there to teach us how to stay safe, but it also guides us down the path line of worrying unnecessarily about things we can and can't control. And when you go down the worrying path, you create scenarios and you visualize timelines that open up for you that are only based on the negative outcome, not the positive outcome of any situation. So when we talk about thought forms, the thing that we have to understand is that thought is energy. Thought is the most powerful and the most basic energy of all. And on different planets, we only think. We broadcast our thoughts. We don't speak on other planets. Other planets, we don't have mouths or noses or whatever. There's no voice box. And we can communicate with those beings. So what you have to understand is your thoughts create energy. And so for a normal human being in their everyday life, there are the thoughts that they are thinking themselves, right? Which is your responsibility. There are the thoughts in your house. So your house has energy, your neighborhood, your city, your country, and your planet. Okay. And I find it helpful that, thoughts are also the ones that don't come from your head are also like clouds that go past. So you could go walk past a bunch of homeless people, right, who are having a hard time. Do you think that they're going to have a lot of positive thoughts coming out of their head? They're going to have all crisis thoughts, all worries, and they're experiencing great sorrow. And we're not saying anything about them, but you can see that if you walk past them, you might go, oh, I feel afraid, because they're afraid, right? Their circumstances is something that they never imagined for themselves. They feel ashamed, embarrassed, worried. How do I get help? Probably a whole myriad of other things, but you can feel that. Any basic human being doesn't need to be an empath to know that person is struggling. I don't want to be around them because the energy isn't right. Like, I'm not going to pull up a picnic hamper and sit here for the rest of my life because I can't help them the way they need to. There are people and organizations, but I can identify that energy is real, right? And so what surrounds them is their own thoughts, the collective thoughts of the other people around them, and then it draws in all the other energy that emanates from the particular location. So when we're understanding thought forms, it's important to understand that we cohabitate the earth with lots of different kinds of beings. So the earth has sentience itself. It feels, everything feels. And also the earth stores emotions and traumas. So we call it the stacks of time. And basically from when the earth began, every layer, so if you're going to take a chunk in a historical archaeological dig, you can see the different layers of time, right? So whatever happened to the earth and the people and the animals that were on it in that layer of time, that stack of time is recorded in the earth's core, in the earth's crust. So there are different locations that we can walk past or be on or live on that have energy there that is stored in there, and the trauma is stored in the earth. And so there are wonderful beings and people who are helping to release and heal the earth and the beings that are stuck in the trauma in the various areas. But so you can understand that even where you live sometimes can have inherently in it, if it hasn't been energetically cleared, thoughts from maybe an animal that was brutally killed, or a person that was brutally killed, or there was a sacrifice, a ritual on there, or there was a war, or a car accident, or a hospital is there, or a gravesite. They've all got their inherent energy. And so when these spots on earth or in your own neighborhood, your own house, haven't been cleared, it acts like a magnet. Yeah. So there's lots of sorts of different thought forms that start off as like wisps of energy, and then by the magnetization of the energy that is drawn to them, they become bigger and bigger and bigger. So there are many different names and classifications for those thought-based energies, but it's just really more important to understand that they exist, and they have always existed, and you are aware of your own surroundings. So be and pay attention to when you feel that something is not right for you. Oh, I don't like that coffee shop because there's something wrong about it. I don't like that nightclub. That shopping center, that car park feels a bit dodgy. That's because the energy principally is off there, and there may be thought forms and beings that are there because nobody's cleansed it. Nobody has used the violet flame. Nobody has come in with a practitioner to release all the beings that are stuck there. So it's being aware of even in simple things. How it's like when you go to a workplace and you work for a boss who shouts rather than encourages, right? And that energy stays in the room, especially if you keep the windows closed and you're in air conditioning and there's no plants that help process, there's no essential oils going. It creates a stifling environment, and that energy just swirls around and helps you to have the same matching mindset and thoughts as the environment you're in. So I guess there's that kind of energy, which is the environmental energy. Then there's that can be in thought forms. Then there are the thought forms that are more between a thought form and a physical being, which would be like your poltergeists. Now a poltergeist is an energetic representation or a remnant from a trauma, an emotion, thought, or feeling or experience that is so traumatic that the person not only disassociates to cope with that, so they step out of themselves, but they also it's like they rip themselves in half because they can no longer be who they were because of the experience. And that energetic remnants, the poltergeist, if the person does not do any healing, because you don't know if that's going to happen to you. You don't know if that has happened to you, really, unless you look back afterwards. That being is trying to get your attention, trying to say, hey, you experienced something really traumatic. You need some help and healing. I don't like being here by myself, but I am going to get physical with you and others, just like a ghost does when they're trying to go to the light, unless you start listening to me. And you can have your blinkers on and be closed auditorily for many lifetimes, and that energy is still sitting there. And what we want to do is we want to bring that back into your body so that it can reintegrate, and then you can bring back the disassociated self as well, so that your energy is contained within your field, not outside, stuck. So yeah, there's like, I'm trying to write a book on all the different kinds of thought forms and energetic beings that there are, because there are so many, because we are so individual and unique.
Yeah, and what you just described kind of sounds a little bit like what I've heard related to soul retrievals, where
Mm-hmm.
someone has had some sort of trauma, or they're not their soul is not fully integrated within their energy field. And I hope I'm not saying that incorrectly, but there's this practice of kind of getting that part of them that they lost due to the trauma that they've disassociated from, and kind of integrating all parts of themselves back into their, I guess, auric field, if that makes any sense.
Mm.
That sounds kind of similar to what you just described.
Yeah, so that is one component or one practice that is helpful. The main thing with all of these areas is that you can only sort of integrate so much at a time, so you can do a soul retrieval, and as much that you are ready to integrate to come back in will come back in, but it's like leveling up. You can only handle so much. So yeah, it's done piece by piece, just as you can't go and review every past life all at once. You can only do one at a time, and you can only do what you can do in that one session, because it depends upon what you're ready for and the level of complexity of the emotions and experiences that you had that need integration. But yes, it's a very good example. Soul retrieval is a very good example of that. Yeah.
So, speaking about kind of having fear be one of the emotions, and I know you had mentioned before too, not on this podcast, but I heard you mention anger as being one of the most powerful emotions to kind of create those thought forms, like, that dark cloud over your head that you can't really release or let go of. Is that why sometimes certain people, even when you meet them and they're nice to you, there's this like visceral um kind of like, I don't want to say rejection, but unease when you're around certain people? Is that what people could be picking up on? Those like negative, and I know that there's levels to it, but I'm trying to stick to the negative thought forms. Does that have like a potential effect on people and how they're perceived because of the energy, that entity that's around them?
Yeah. So anger, you're correct, is a very strong emotion, because it represents that we have crossed a boundary, and it may, or somebody has crossed our boundary that we may or may not have even realized is there. So and I don't have the name of the book off the top of my head, but there is a beautiful book which I've gifted some of my clients, whereby these thought forms were drawn by psychics, and you can see anger because it is shown as a bright red arrow which has a hook form, so it hooks into your heart. So energetically, if you could see it in a scanning machine, you would see it as a red arrow, very intense in the middle with a hook on it. And so when you feel angry, it hooks into the other person, and that's why you can viscerally feel it, because it draws you in. And beneath anger is all the other emotions. Brené Brown talks about it very well in her latest big book on emotions. It's like an encyclopedia of emotions. It's not the right word, but and behind anger there is sadness, there is frustration, there is grief, there is guilt. Like, there's a number of different emotions, but anger is just so powerful because it's kind of like a message from the soul. It's like a screaming warning at you. You are stepping over this boundary, or this is not authentic to you. This person is not authentic to you. This situation is not authentic to you. You are not being authentic with yourself. There's something here that needs investigation. It's also a positive thing in the way that it says to you, hey, are you being real with yourself here? Because you are putting yourself in a situation, or you found yourself in a situation that makes you angry. That doesn't resonate with your heart. So what can you do about it? And so with the thought forms, or the entities that are around that will be attracted to you, it's because they like to be near that energy, and they're like, well, this is my home. This is where I belong. I'll hang around here for a while. I resonate with that. And anger manifests in the body as sore arms, sore necks, or shoulders, parts of your body that no chiropractor or doctor can help with. It causes heart attacks. All of the emotions in our body cause major symptoms, and I guess the entities that we attract exacerbate those symptoms, because it's like it's like if you imagine a beautiful Sunday ice cream. You start with the ice cream, and then you layer it with all the different sprinkles and marshmallows and chopped up banana and all the things. And it looks like it's going to be delicious. And then you put the great big pretzel on top and then a big scoop of cream. And by the time you eat all of that, you want to throw up, right? Because it's an excess of sweetness. The same can be with all the different layers of the feelings, the thoughts, the emotions, the entities. And, I guess one of the biggest things that we have to realize is that other human beings are attracted to us, who are ghosts who haven't crossed over. And the reason why I would classify them that way as sort of a thought form and sort of an entity is because they have around them the regrets and the anger from the way that they were treated or they treated somebody, their unresolved emotions, which is holding them back from going to the light, because they have to forgive themselves. Basically, they have to see the goodness in themselves to go forward. And when you're this cesspool of anger, and maybe you go past a pub as an example, and you're like, I just had a hard day, I really need to go and have a wine, I'm going to unwind and relax. Well, in every pub is every alcoholic that ever died that didn't go to the light. Every drug junkie, every depressed person, every anything that was holding themselves back. Maybe somebody started off just going to play the pokies one day as a bit of stress relief. I'm making this up as an example. It's not a real example, but they had just a pint there, and before they knew it, they'd lost their groceries money, right? And they were like, okay, next week I'll come back and I'll fix it up. And they started this cycle. But before they knew it, they got more and more into trouble and had more and more drinks. They didn't want to go home. They started fighting with their wife or their husband or whatever it is. And maybe they had an accident on the way home and died or got stabbed or whatever. There's this massive cloud of anger, regret, and guilt, and I shouldn't have done that, and I knew what I was doing. But they would put themselves in an environment where there's other similar people there. What happens when you die? If you don't go to the light, if you don't look for the angels or whatever your religious or spiritual background says that is going to be waiting for you, it could be Jesus, it could be Muhammad, it could be your great aunt or a niece or just an angel, an owl or a rainbow bridge. If you can't see that because your thoughts are clouding you, it's like you've got great big cataracts over your eyes and you can't see it. It's clouded by darkness. So what happens is your energy makes you ping back and forward to where you felt the greatest emotions that are holding you back. So it'll ping you back to the pub and you'll be a ghost hanging out at the pub, or it'll ping you back to your home where you're trying to tell your wife that you're really sorry, that you couldn't forgive them or make up with them before you died. And so your energy keeps pinging back and forwards. And what happens is that what we find in these collective areas is that, especially like in like I've seen this in Holocaust memorials and in cemeteries and in hospitals, the more the energy is fed on, right, the more of the same energy comes. So the more ghosts, the more negative entities. And so they form a collective. They pull together as a collective. And that one collective can stay there. But if there's something that resonates, that somebody that walks in the door, they're like, I'm an energetic match. Either I knew this person in a past life, or they look like or remind me of my wife or whatever, or they know a ghost rescue person that I know can help me because I can just see the light now, I want to get out. If you have holes in your aura because of all of these emotions, you haven't done the inner healing work, and or you have a soul contract to explore this like I did, then they will attach to you and you will inherit all of those tendencies because you've got all of that energy physically in your aura. You've got all those ghosts and all the demons and everything. And so that's when you become the alcoholic or the drug junkie or the smoke addicted person, because not only have you been in a location because you were trying to fix your emotion, not with emotional healing, but by repressing it, which is what alcohol does. Alcohol makes you feel good for a minute, but it's actually a depressant on the immune system, and it stresses the immune system. And when you stress the immune system, what you do is, it's like, here we go, this will do as an example. It's like turning your aura into Swiss cheese or a pencil holder with holes in it, yeah? And each one of these holes is like a pocket where energy from outside of you can become stored. And if you visualize those as stones or crystals, they'll be stones to start with, but they need to be removed. But if you visualize them as crystals, then you can see that they're beautiful because they've got the wisdom within them. But what you want to do is you want to restore your immune system, which is why your immune system is really important, because that strengthens your aura, which is your shield against the world. And when you strengthen your aura and this becomes more solid rather than with all the holes, it means that there's nothing for these beings, entities, ghosts, thought forms to get attached to. So yeah, if we understand that in each of these venues there are beings that are stuck or crying for help because of their own emotions, and if we energetically match them by going into this venue to say, oh, I feel so agitated, I'm just going to go in here for a minute, quick 5 minutes, I'll calm down, then I'll go back to the world. No, you've just added like rocket fuel onto that fire, and you've become in resonance with that energy. And that's how we get attachments, pretty much. Because we go to situations where they're like, great, here's my exit strategy. This person can help me because they are energetically matched to me. I can see a Swiss cheese hold. I'm going to go in there. I'm going to hide. I'm going to feel safe. And, I will work my emotions out through their body. And that's how we see, like with I've had many examples of clients who have, and I'm not doing this to be fearful or create fear. I'm doing this to show you that you just have to be aware that if you're going to go out somewhere, deal with your emotions before you go out. You know what I mean? So I've had clients where they have attached a ghost who was dying of breast cancer or dying of some form of cancer, and they attached to the body, and so that person then manifested that cancer because it's energy on top of energy. So yeah, I would caution, always be responsible when you get in the car or walk out the door. If nothing else, go and stand on a piece of grass for 5 minutes, take your shoes off, tell the earth that you have got all this excess emotion that you want to put down into the earth, and then ask an angel to cleanse it after you, because the earth can absorb it for you, but you don't want it to stay stuck. And then be responsible. I will not go out of my house feeling negative emotions. I will go feeling balanced and calm, and therefore I can be calm and only attract calm situations. And I will visualize that my day will be calm, because if I go out and I say I'm going to have, it's late, I'm going to run into the shit traffic and it's going to be stressful, then you're saying and affirming out loud, because your thoughts start first. You thought it and then you said it out loud. You've just affirmed with vocal resonance that is what you are creating. And so then that energy becomes like energy, and that's how you experience a bad day. And sure, you can't control the car that cut in with you, but if you kind of like to think of it as like a simulation, like a computer game, where there are standard players that will come in and they will be the person that gets in front of you. It's a message from the world. Slow down, put some calming music on, and you won't attract these other people who are creating an energy of storm around them, they just won't come near your car. They're not going to bang into your car at the car park because you sat in yourself and said, how's my energy? And I know that's hard to do, and sometimes you can't. And that's when you come to somebody like me who says, you say, look, I'm just attracting, I've had 6 relationships and they've all been bad in a row. I thought I was healing. I thought I'd been reflective, but I just need a hand. And then we can look in and we can look at your body and we can do a body scan and we can say, okay, Archangel Michael, Archangel Azrael, Archangel Zadkiel, shine your light of truth in here. Have a look at this part of the body. She's feeling anger and she feels it in the elbow. What does the elbow have to say? And then we shine the light in there, and the elbow, your body can talk to you. The elbow says, right, guess what? This is like an image of, and then they'll show me an anchor or a cesspool of infection or a symbol or a color or a word. And then we'll say to that part of the body, okay, all right, I hear you. I acknowledge your emotions. Are you ready to release? And it might be simple, yes. And the angels can shine their divine healing rays in and release that. But there may be an entity in there. There may be a demon in there. There may be an animal or a human being, or we've even had cases of implants from other locations, and even extraterrestrial beings who are stuck in your energy field. And yeah, you can't possibly know that.
Yeah. What are implants? What do you mean by
Yeah. So
implants?
yeah. So the way that it has worked historically is that people on Earth have not been ready developmentally to receive light language and thought-based communication. So from other civilizations. We've been afraid of that. We've thought we were the only people ever anywhere, right? And so therefore we can only talk to people with our mouths and our ears, right? So on all of the planets, they operate differently, and thought is the language. And so basically, when you live on other planets, you go through the same experience, different kinds of experiences, but essentially we're all the same. We're the same soul, just with different pieces of us on different planets, and you have experiences there. And so you have your own regrets and emotions. And sometimes the people on those planets, or the beings, the humanoids, or the different kinds of expressions of creative energy that are there, they're afraid because maybe their planet is in battle. They're also experiencing duality. We're in duality in Earth, which means we experience positive and negative, light and dark. And in our universe, so does everybody else. Our universe is a universe of duality. And so they experience that. And so most of the times that implants have been used is because the beings on those planets, they're like your mother, brother, your father, your sister, your cousin as well. They have relationships, your co-worker, and perhaps their planet is going through turmoil and they have to leave. And the mother, your person who's your mother, can't leave with you. Like, she knows you're going to reincarnate or you're going to move to another spaceship or whatever. And these devices are a cross between a thought form energetically and a physical, like a really dense form of energy, which puts a stamp on your soul that says, this child is mine. So that if I can ever communicate with her in the future, I can find her and see that she's okay, because they have love the same as we have love. So they're afraid, they're worried, and they put this energetic imprint. It can also be that they can see that you need to go to this other planet or location, and you need to reincarnate to Earth, and that you're going to be a spiritual being because your contracts are in your aura, your destiny is in your aura. And so they might say, okay, I'm really scared to let her go. I know she's going to a better place. She's chosen another level of learning, but I can see, and my guides can show me that she's going to be an XYZ in that lifetime. And I know that if I get the opportunity and she does her work and she comes across and reads the right books and things like that, that I can help her bring through the skills that she had in this lifetime that we have on our planet that can help her in her lifetime on Earth, right? So they can put those devices in, which basically is a super conscious and subconscious way of communicating stuff with you, which is relaying information to you for the time when you're ready to receive it. But the problem is, and a lot of people may disagree with me, but my trainer and I both agree that you have, well, I will never leave an implant in, that you have to have a pretty darn good cause for me to leave that in, because, and what I explain to these beings, and I have a whole season of this on my podcast, is I do understand the intention. I really do. But a human has a lot of dense energy here on Earth that we have to deal with at the moment. And so by you putting in that implant, what you're doing is you're creating an area of the body that has got heavy, dense energy in there based on your fear that you can't communicate, or, it shouldn't be there. It doesn't, the human body was not designed to have implants in it, right? And so it can cause lumps, bumps, and illnesses in the body. Yeah. And so what I explain to them is I say, well, all right, you put this in. Do you realize that Earth has the ability now? People on Earth are opening up to light language. And all my discussions so far were, oh no, sorry, I didn't realize that. Well, I'm like, okay, all right. I need you to go and get your teams and get your hospital teams and come here, immediately tell them that we revoke the authority for this device to be implanted. We understand the intentions, but the fact that it is showing up as an emotion in this body means that it's malfunctioning. The client, the human, no matter your positive intentions, has register it in their subconscious mind, and it's coming to the conscious mind. Do you want them to become ill? No. All right. So now give them a light language transmission so that they now know how to communicate with you via light language in the future, in the various sensory abilities that they have that are the strongest for them. So it might be auditory, might be olfactory, it might be sense, might be signs, depending upon the level of development of that person. And generally, they're very, very grateful that you have identified that this person who has this implant has made the developmental changes that they need to be aware of the signs that their body is showing, that it registers that they have a connection with a being on another planet, and we get them to remove the device, to heal, seal, cleanse it, and act as though it was never there. And then they can develop beautiful relationships. And what you find is that generally, let's say it was a mother on another planet. So I had a client, and the case studies on my podcast, and not only did she put this device in, the client, her daughter, but she also physically attached. She was so afraid of losing her daughter. She was so traumatized because her daughter died accidentally by eating a berry on her planet. She was like the princess on this planet, and she went out wandering. She was like a restless princess. She didn't want to be a princess in a party dress and a crown. She wanted to be like she was the tomboy of that planet. She didn't want the religious and monarchical kind of experiences that she was destined to have. And she went wandering in the woods there and ate the wrong berry and died of poisoning. So her mother's grief was so intense that she attached her energy to the energy of the daughter, so that when the daughter reincarnated as a human being, she was still both implant and physically attached to her daughter. And what that meant was that in this lifetime, the client of mine, she had great troubles with her mother. She couldn't get on with her mum. And the reason was because her other mum still stuck to her energy. She's like, this is my daughter. She's not your daughter. And so she made her burr up and have angry reactions or misunderstandings, or she couldn't soften to her mother. And when we let the being that was her mother understand and let her do the light language transmission, the being can talk to us through the client. And she was just crying her eyes out. She's like, I'm so sorry, but I love this child so much. And you understand that, you've got your own children. I'm like, I know, it's all right. Let out your emotions. You're fine. Okay. Do the light language transmission and now go. And as soon as that happened, the client was then able to not only increase her spiritual interactions and develop a relationship with the being, which helped her own spiritual business, but she was able to have a wonderful relationship with her mother slowly. But it improved because it's suddenly like that energy was free. So hopefully that explains
No, this
it.
is so fascinating because this is my first time hearing about the concept of implants, right? And I understand what you're saying. I think I want to ask a specific question, right? Because you talked about implants being energetic and also physical, right? And it's a lot of past life situations from other planets, right? So it has like an ET element to it. So we know a lot of people have talked about being taken from their homes and being abducted, and they have experiments done on them. So for the people who you've worked with that have had implants in them, is that through abduction, or are they born with the implant? I don't, because you said that it's physical and also energetic.
Yeah, so I don't have experiences with UFOs and abductions. All of my knowledge about that, I'll be honest with you, is through Dolores Cannon and her books. And so anything, and also through listening to Bashar's channeling. So anything I've learned about that is secondhand. And my understanding of that is that in the majority of cases, you're being abducted by your own species. Because there are a number of species who are trying to create or who are part of a federation, and that federation is checking on humanity and making sure that the situation within which humanity is faced, they're monitoring how the human body is evolving, because they want to move us from a predominantly fear-based resonance closer to a higher vibration of joy and love. There are planets like Mintaka where I've taken clients back to where it is pure joy. That's the whole purpose of the planet, is pure joy. And the planet is struggling under fear. So as to whether they were born with them, the clients that I've had so far, yes, they were born with those. They come down through the meridians and the nadis, basically. So you don't notice it. You only really notice it when it's like time for it to come out. You're experiencing a blockage in your system. You're suddenly like, I'm no longer going to put up with this. I don't know what it is, but I need some help of some form. And so we do that scan to check that there's not something there, if that's sort of what it is that you're potentially experiencing. And it has to be irrational. Do you know what I mean? We're not talking about surface level stuff. You got to say, this is unpredictable behavior for me. This is irrational. A person that I know and love and who works with me, who's known me for a while, would explain that this is not normal for me. I don't have a medical condition. I don't have a psychological or mental health condition that requires specialized treatment. We're not talking about those people. I don't work in that realm. This is talking about spiritual treatment based on emotions and past lives. So yeah, I'm not sure if that answers your question.
It does, and it does, and there's another level to that, right? Because I'm thinking about my listeners. So speaking on the physicality of the implant, when it's cleared, I know you've been talking a lot about clearing it spiritually, but is it also cleared physically? Like, is there a surgical procedure, or does the person, throw it up or something? Have you seen an implant physically leave a person's body, or
Yeah, so they
seen?
don't.
Yeah.
Yeah, so because of my relationship with the archangels and the beings from the Federation and all of my other lifetimes, when we bring a client to them for healing, they bring in all the we call them the rescue surgeons of light, the spirits of light, who were surgeons in a past life, and they energetically work on them. We can see the operating table, but the way that they work is because they've got access to all levels of our physical being, our physical energy, our mental, our emotional, and our spiritual. Excuse me. And so they can remove it, and it is removed. If you were to get a doctor who's a medical doctor, and there are case studies in different books that I have read and studied from, where they have physically identified an object, which is an implant. If you try and remove it physically through surgery, it moves. So you create a big wound, because no matter what the doctor does, this implant moves, because it's both of this planet but not of this planet. So it needs an off-planet solution to get rid of it. And how do I know that they're real? Well, because I've had my own implants taken out, and I have even had one where it was so big that it left physical bruising that I could see after it was removed on my foot. It didn't hurt, but the physical bruising, sometimes I ask the angels to show me the evidence. Do you know what I mean? I do have quite a rigorous mind. Like, am I making this up? Is this real? And they showed me by leaving enough bruising for me to go, oh, right, yeah, that was real. I get that now. But generally for a normal client, no, they're just going to feel tired and they need to drink lots of water. And that's the only thing, because the rescue spirits of light, the angels, the archangels, and the beings, they take it out at all levels, and then they infuse it with the white light, divine white light, and then they also infuse it with their own healing rays. So they're not leaving a hole, because a hole is a void, and in a void, other things are attracted to it. So you want to heal, cleanse, and seal that area, and so they do that. And that's why I would never claim to do that side of it. It's not me. I'm just a human being. I'm not up there. But so I call in the team that I've been working with for the last 5 years to do this, and they do it. Because how would I know? That's not my area of expertise. I'm not a doctor.
Yes, I can imagine. This is all of this is so fascinating. And I do want to start getting more into talking about just kind of how we can release a lot of these spirit attachments if people can do it themselves, if they always need to go to a practitioner. But before we even get there, I think there's another piece I want to talk about a little bit, which is the piece about Black magicians and having those entity attachments. Because I did have someone on the show, for example, talk about entity attachments through working with tarot cards, for example. And they talked about how, um, a lot of times people don't realize that with tarot cards, for example, they're interfacing with Black magicians, and how those magicians could continue to influence that person without them even realizing it. And I'm not just saying that only happens with tarot cards, but I'm just using that as an example. And I kind of want to talk a little bit more about Black magician entity attachments and where these Black magicians reside on a dimensional level, dimensional plane.
Okay. So was that Tina, by the way? Tina Irwin?
Yes, it was.
Yeah, okay. So Tina's been a great mentor to me.
I love
She
her.
was one of
Yeah.
the first people who helped me work with the concepts of all of this. So yeah, I've worked with Tina and I understand her. So like the, I have a slightly differing opinion to Tina, and my thing there with the tarot cards, and when Tina taught me about that, I threw every single card I had out, all my oracle decks, all my tarot cards and everything, because we had just cleared a lot of energy for myself, and I did not want to, and I was not comfortable with, and I wasn't in the position to reinvestigate that world without understanding more the energy side of things and where I was supposed to work. And so after I removed these items from my house, what ended up happening was that these are tools of divination, right? They're meant to be guides, they're meant to be ways to show you signs to start working with your intuition. Okay. And often when we use these tools, we can be feeling very uncertain. Okay. And so we're basically putting up our hands and saying, help, world, I don't understand. Give me a sign, show me. And there is both negative and positive energy that is going to rush to your aid to say, I'm here, right? Because as we said originally, the negatives have their wisdom within that. But if you're resonating at the level of negative energy, if you're in fear when you ask for help, you're going to attract the fear-based being. And so that's how I would rephrase my perspective on Tina's teachings, which are correct, but they're also, it depends upon the person. So when you ask the tarot, are you asking in fear? Have you already established a relationship with your guardian angel or your angels or your spirit guides? Do you know who they are? Have you tested them? Do you know the basic tests of working with a spirit guide to make sure that they are not a Black magician or an entity that is masking itself, because they can create carbon copy tests, replicas of themselves. So it is a very valid point. Always use tools of divination with due diligence and due caution. And I will get onto the Black magicians because I have personal experience with that. But my point here is that working with the archangels, so with Archangel Michael and Zadkiel, they have showed me that when you remove the things that are holding you back, so the all of the things that we've talked about so far today on the podcast, you free up your energy, right? And then the angels can start working with your heart space. Okay. And when you look into your heart and you remove any obstacles in your heart as well, then you can start feeling the heart-based energy. And this is a really strong energy. It can be overwhelming. It can make you cry as you're learning to deal with this. It literally comes out of the center of your chest, and it will be experienced to you as somewhere between a pain and a pleasure. It's not like, oh, I just feel happy. It's like, before I do anything now, they've taught me to sit and then say, I'm waiting for the heart energy to open. My chest expands, and then I can feel it in my chest, right? I can feel it. It's an overwhelming feeling that then calms and sits there. And it's like, it's really feeling the energy, right? So if I was to use, not that I have any in my house, a tarot deck right now to ask for advice, well, I wouldn't, because I can hear and ask my spirit guides. But what I would do first would be, I would say, I would wait until I could open my heart energy, right? In this heart space, I'm going to ask a specific being that I have a relationship with, who has worked with me time and time again, to use the tarot deck to show me a message, because I'm not getting a clear message in my other sensory facilities today. So I would say, look, I'm sorry, Archangel Michael, I'm trying to get through to you. Can you help me open my heart? Because I can't hear you today. I can't hear your sounds. I can't see your signs. Here's my tarot deck. I know you can give me a comprehensive message or reading. I'm sorry that I can't go direct today, but could you please help me? And then you might have some little ideas. You might say, okay, show me you first, Archangel Michael, or show me where your energy is. And the beings that you work with, they've taught me to see your space behind your eyes in a quadrant. And so for everybody, it'll be different. But I know that if I see the energy in the, it's going to be reversed, obviously, for people watching this, the top left-hand quadrant of my eyes, that is my soul family and people that I have as spiritual guides within my soul family. If it's bottom left, it's my animal spirit guides. If it's top right, then it's the archangels and angels, mostly the archangels. Bottom right is ghosts or beings that need crossing over. So I check to see where the energy is. So I know where Archangel Michael's going to appear. So if the energy is there, right, okay. And then I look for the signs and listen. Because I have worked with him so much, he has specific phrases and ways of dressing and appearing. But the ultimate test, Tina maybe have talked about this because she taught it to me, is you imagine throwing salt at that being. And we do this in regressions when I teach people about the spirit guides. If it is a being of the light, they're going to brush it off and laugh at you. You know, they're going to be like, oh. But if it's a being of the dark or somebody that is not aligned with your intention to provide you advice from the light, you'll see it sizzling and that being will dissolve. So I guess Tina, not speaking for Tina, but an observation is that so many people just rely on tarot and oracle decks to have an answer without checking where that information is coming from. Because as they say to me, there are so many beings that want to talk to you. Who do you want to hear from today, the dark or the light? You know, yeah, if you just say I need help and I'm just going to open my oracle deck and shuffle it and not be intentional, but I'll just, sorry, it's really strong now, that energy. I just want an answer right now. And we all get frustrated. See, the energy of frustration has a message in it itself, and you're going to get a being that resonates with the energy of frustration rather than the energy of peace, joy, love, or harmony. So that's why, again, you need to sit and center yourself, ask for help. If you aren't at the stage where you can open your heart to get that physical radiation from your heart, do the work, because the messages will only be to the extent that which you are resonating yourself. So if you are resonating on fear, you're going to get fear-based messages come out through the oracle deck, or you're going to interpret them as fear, and you'll get worried and you're like, well, I can't do that because if I do this, this will happen, this will happen. So I won't do that. And you're then creating those timelines where they are possibilities. So hopefully that answers that part of the question. So the second part of the question, black magicians and beings. Now, again, my experience with black magicians is from a past life. And I have this on my podcast that people can listen to. It's kind of like, for me, one of the most controversial things that I posted on my podcast, because it's me putting all the bad and the good all out there at once. So my expertise isn't in where they reside, but my understanding is that the black magician is both one of the most evilest beings around because they resonate at the root level of fear, but they were surrounded by fear and were originally a being who was going through their own lessons and circumstances, but they chose to seek advice from the dark rather than the light. And so the dark enabled them with a set of tools and spells and potions and lotions that would create results for them based on the intention that was at the moment in time when they reached out. And so, yes, they create awful things. And look, you only have to go on Facebook to ask to type in certain keywords, and suddenly you'll have somebody that says, oh, I can do a love spell for you, or I can hex or curse, or I can do a voodoo spell. Okay, but you're incurring karma because you are saying, I can't control this person, so I want to control them now. So I am going to cast into the world with my thoughts and my words and with physical intentions. I am paying somebody to do an act on my behalf to ensure that something happens that I want so much because I'm energetically stuck with this person, that I will pay money, which is seen as like a karmically, like a bribe, not a bribe, but it's karmic debt. It's a physical monetary payment that says, I need this action happening so much. I have no forgiveness in my heart. This person has harmed me. I want to harm them in return, an eye for an eye kind of a thing. When the thing is, we need to go back to what's the root cause of this? The root cause is I may have been very nasty to them in a past life. So I'm reaping what I sowed because I believe in an eye for an eye, and what they'll give me, I need to repay back in the next life. You have the ability to work off this spiritually in the afterlife realms. But a lot of us choose to reincarnate to physically experience the opposite of what we did in a previous lifetime. But when you intentionally do an act of harm towards somebody else, then you bring in these beings who are there to bow and say, hello, I have a lot of wisdom in this area. Would you like me to help you? Because they see, because of their resonance, that they are specialists and experts in their area of knowledge, right? So yes, you can hire them if you like, and you will get exactly your desired results. But you are now entangling yourself with those beings, and you have now created in your mind, because you're cognizant of it, you're aware of it, you paid for it, you signed a contract, that you are now going to have to deal with that energetically. So they, in my mind, stem from what we would call, and the fourth dimension is the wrong word, but the dimension in between worlds. So the stuck space, the realms where, so in different religions, we would say there is an energetic place where you go below to work out all that trauma, right? Before you can see the light and go to the light. So some people call that hell. The Buddhists have, all the different layers of where you go through these different spaces to energetically think over your implications. The problem is that when you go down, you encounter all these dark beings, black magicians, demons, hell beings, negative entities of all kinds, of which we could go on forever about all the different classifications. And they conglomerate together, and it's suffocating. And there is no light down there except for the beings like archangels, who have a multifaceted approach. They have a complementary being who can descend when the time is right to bring up a being into the realms to go above. But when you really step into those experiences where by choice you may choose to discover the depths of the darkness, because we hear about soul growth, and the soul growth needs experiences that are complementary. It needs to say, well, why do people behave like that? Let me go see. Let me go experience that, because your soul up there goes, oh, that's interesting. I'm just exploring energy. Our human goes, well, that is a horrendous experience, and that is unethical, and I never want to be like that again. And I can't believe those people. But what we learn when we, and sort of like Buddhist nuns and monks are great examples, and also I guess there are various priests and nuns in the other religions that do it, where they go to, say, jails, and they sit and they work with people who are in jails who the rest of the world have said are unforgivable. Their actions are unforgivable, and they try to help them understand their emotions and come to the light in the best way that they possibly can for these incarnations. So yes, the black magicians exist in that underworld realm, and they stay stuck there until there is some kind of circumstance or a being that interacts with them to bring them closer to the surface. And, depending upon the kind of experiences that you request in a lifetime, you may, through your past life regression therapy, for example, have interacted because you're a great spiritual being or had great powers in a previous lifetime, whereby a wizard of a negative kind or a black magician had inflicted negative energy upon you in order to suppress your skills, because they were afraid of you, because you were more powerful than them, because the dark is afraid of the light, because they think it burns them, right? When actually the light is within them always. But we need both the dark and the light to evolve. And so when we may incarnate and explore past lives and find ourselves interacting with a black magician, the black magician may have attached themselves to us so that we could experience extreme negativity, so that we could be of service to bring others out of the negativity and into the light. So yes, you don't want to willingly, consciously work with black magicians unless you wish to, in your next lifetime, investigate that part of the world. And it's a horrendous experience, but it's also hugely soul growing. But it's when you're incarnated as a human being, it is not the time to think, oh, I'm just going to go play with a black magician. So it's always comes back to the intention. Yeah. What is the intention?
Thank you so much for sharing that. And I know throughout our conversation, we've talked about the different types of energy attachments, because everything is energy, right? We started with thought forms, we talked about implants and, situations from past lives, people that we've had experiences with from different planets kind of attaching to us. And now we talked about the whole concept of, darker entities, one of those being black magicians and people intentionally and unintentionally having those energetic attachments, right? So now I kind of want to talk about how can people release themselves from that? And starting with thought forms, which if I were to put it on a scale, I would assume thought forms are the most manageable and easy to rid ourselves from. So when it comes to thought forms, for example, can we pray ourselves out of those feelings and emotions that continue to plague us? Or do we need to always seek out a practitioner like yourself to help us release those things? And then, of course, just in general, when it comes to the more intense energetic attachments, how can we let go of that? Again, do we always need to go to a practitioner like yourself to release those things?
Yeah. Okay. So with thoughts, all of the things that we've talked about so far are the ways that you can work at that at the basic level. And again, it depends upon the intensity and the severity of the implications in your life. So yes, you can begin to study and understand mindfulness. You can begin to study and look at affirmations and surrounding yourselves with positive energy, fresh flowers, going into nature, grounding yourself, using aromatherapy, doing breath work. There's all of those things you can do by yourself and study and learn how to use it, or with a practitioner. It's always good to be aware of your limitations, to not say, I know everything, but know that you need to study or find a master or somebody to work with to guide you to answer questions. So there's lots of things you can do in your daily life. Always have plants in your house, clears the energy. Always use essential oils, diffusers, pray in whatever form, because the prayer sends a message of white light up to begin to help you. Get to know your spirit guides, check who they are, learn to trust your intuition. And again, these things can be done by yourself, but it depends where you are at and the level of confidence you have. You may start using yoga to concentrate on your body and your mind, but to become more aware of the symptoms that your body is displaying. It really does depend upon the level of experience you have. I mean, you can meditate and learn how to meditate, but then you may come across different experiences where you're like, that meditation didn't feel right. I wonder what's going on. And that's where, even in my own world, I continuously seek, learn, ask for help and advice, because it's calming and helpful to reflect and say, do I have the full knowledge of this? Because, we can have wishful thinking as well, where we say, yeah, I've dealt with that. But where it comes to being is the circumstances in your life aren't changing. And so we don't ask you to do everything at once, one thing at a time. And the best way to do this is to sit with your intention again and say, I intend to change my energy in this aspect of my life. So simply today, I'm going to follow my heart and see, I will take an action, the very next action, whether it's just rinsing my glass in the sink or going outside to smell the flower that's bloomed on my plant. When I do that action, has it made me feel better? Because I need to find and follow the path of feeling better rather than feeling negative, because I have the choice. If I feel begrudged, obliged, frustrated, angry about doing something, it's not the right moment, right? Yes, you may have to do something. You may feel frustrated about having to do it, and it's unavoidable. Like you're a mum, you have to pack 6 sandwiches for the kids. But right now, you could do it and not have your cup of tea and have your shower and yell at the kids, or you could take a moment, take a time to go outside, do whatever, and then come back to making the sandwiches. Because the energy of the way that you make the sandwiches impacts the food, right? So it's about simply, and it seems so simple, but it can be hard, following the energy of every thought and every decision, so that, if you're doing that and you're seeing changes in your life, that's perfect. But we will reach a plateau at some stage where then the next level comes up, and it's a level for growth. It's not saying you're a bad person. It says, wonderful, you followed this level. Now we're ready to go to the next level. Are you ready? Okay. Things will start to show up. It's like a series of tests. We'll show you again. How are you going to react this time to this circumstance or this person? A second time, same thing. All right, I'm aware of it now. Third time, no, I'm not going down that path. I've seen that. I'm aware of it. I'm going to choose a different route today. Okay, great. Now that you've made a different choice and you've consciously been aware of what's coming up in your life, let's reflect. Do you need some additional assistance now? Do you want to look at yourself and say, there's still something niggling here. There's still something I'm uncertain about. And it's when something pops up again that's irrational, you can't explain, you've tried your best, and it's bothering you, you're noticing that synchronicities aren't coming up in your life, then is the wisest time to reflect and say, I need a practitioner of some sort, or I need to get some wisdom of some sort. And then you can brief and inform them. So, for example, my clients have to fill out very lengthy questionnaires, and they get angry and frustrated and cry and don't want to fill out these forms because they're doing the work in filling out the form, and the emotions come forward, but they're ready to do the form and tell me exactly what's going on in their life. It's not a knee-jerk reaction. It's a thought-led, behavioral-led process where they go, well, I've tried, but everything you said, it hasn't worked. So now I need some help. So yeah, in the meantime, do everything that you've learned about. Take the one thing that resonated from discussing this today and say, I'm going to try that one thing. And then maybe I'll come back and listen to this podcast episode again, or another episode on your podcast, and say, I'm going to try that one thing. And be self-empowered. That's the whole thing. It's to say that I have the power within. I can learn energy. I am an energetic being. Let me take it slowly. And if the things are exacerbating in life, then I can either choose to ask for some help to slow things down, or I can go, right, this is a turning point in my life. I need help. I need loads of it, and I need it now. But the responsibility always comes back to the root cause of you saying, yes, these things are happening to me, but they're happening for me. So therefore, I take the ultimate root cause responsibility to figure out why, rather than blaming, shaming, and going into victimhood, because that takes you back into the negative rather than the light.
And that was an important thing to say that I also wanted to mention as well. And just to kind of touch on the piece about you working with your clients. So is it a situation, my understanding is that you often take them through some sort of past life regression or regression therapy to kind of unearth where a lot of these energetic attachments, especially obviously the negative ones, which they're seeking to alleviate, you take them through some sort of regressive process to figure out what these attachments are, where they're coming from, and why they have those attachments, correct?
That's correct. Yeah. So people have to apply to work with me. They can't just purchase it unless they're doing one of my podcast sessions, which are focused on happiness and joy, or some specific process. I very clearly state whether it's a therapeutic process, which needs a process of paperwork and a series of sessions that follow a procedure. If I'm working on an angel or archangel based well, I call it a directive or an ultimatum, but they always tell me it's not a directive. It's a suggestion that resonates with your heart. If it's one of those, like the happiest moments of our soul, or the upcoming infinite love sessions that I do, or even the alchemy of the heart workshops, masterclasses that I'm doing, these are technically, by human standards and human evaluation methods, not therapeutic, because they don't follow a process. These follow my higher self and the higher self and the soul of the client's processes, and the angels and archangels are in charge. So it's an element of exploration to understand humanity and the universe. So but yes, we have to assume that if it needs to be a past life, for example, for spirit releasement therapy, we will go to that past life, because that's where the energy originates from. And you need to understand that the energy comes from a root cause in a past life. If it's not, if it's from the current life, then we do hypnotherapy with present life regression to get to the moment in the present life where you disassociated or where you encountered a being or an entity, and we deal with it just in the present life. Your higher self and your guides know, and they always will guide you to the exact moment, because it's your eternal mind stream that's guiding us to the moment. Your guides and higher self work together because they give the energetic protection for you, and are there to be of service to you. But it's your mind stream that is sending us back to the point in time where there is an exclamation mark that says, this here needs to be looked at. You're not broken, but this here is causing an issue now, and you can keep going on in life. But we would like you to have the optimal experience, because life is supposed to be a balance, but also we're trying to tip the vibration of Earth this way towards the light, so that fear isn't the resonating, war creating, disaster making vibration. Everybody's tired of it, but we have to move it as best as we can, and we can only do that with every thought, every decision, every behavior, and every person.
Yeah.
We can't just sprinkle sugar over the earth and hope that it sticks, because it doesn't. It starts with every mind.
Exactly. And I think it's important that you keep mentioning this whole aspect of personal power, because I think a lot of times people go to practitioners for healing, which you do, of course, but it's a co-creation of the healing, if that makes any sense. It's the person who is needing the healing that's also kind of healing themselves, but working with you to realize that they have um that power within them. Because I do think a lot of times with energy and things that are attached to us, we have freedom of choice. We don't have to always engage with that energy. And I know sometimes it's overpowering, and I think sometimes we feel like we're stuck in it. But I think what practitioners do, and I don't mean to oversimplify it, and I know it's deeper than that, is the right practitioners with good intentions wake us up to the power within us and wake us up to things that are affecting us that we are not privy to, or we've chosen not to look at, right? So then once we consciously are aware of that, then we can move forward and then we can heal. That's how I kind of see that relationship working. So,
Yeah,
yeah.
specifically, yeah. You are drawn to a practitioner because they have something that they can offer you. And yes, there may be a healing component where they use their own energy. However, what you're going to them for is their wisdom, their toolkit of skills to bring that out in you, because you are the one, and it's your soul, and you have the ability within, but there are things that you've done that have blocked that ability. So we're both guides and teachers and healers, but the most important thing is that we are not in that moment that you're experiencing right now. So we have a much more objective perspective to be able to consult and stay out of the energy of the situation, to say, I can call in your XYZ being to give me advice, or I can ask your higher self right now what their advice is, because it's all to do with you and your soul. And then you are the one that is in the session giving the permission for this to happen, because the reason that you're in the session is because you can't access it right there and then, otherwise you would have done it. So you're asking for help, and therefore we are giving help so that you can then increase your skills to be able to cope with that situation, and importantly, not be in that situation again.
Yes, exactly. And, you know, just to kind of wrap up everything that we've been talking about, I kind of want to go back to something you said at the very beginning of the show where you talked about when you were kind of breaking down what spirit releasement therapy is and the entity attachments on all levels, and kind of highlighting the fact that, you know, a lot of these entity attachments still have the light of God in them, but, you know, it's they're so far from that doesn't mean it's not in them. Because I think when we think about these things, we just think about them as like 100% evil, doom and gloom. And I'm sure some of them very much present that way. But I thought it was very interesting that you mentioned that the light of God and the spark of God is within them. And a lot of times, even in working with clients, we can illuminate that light in the darker entities as well to help with the release and also help them kind of reach and go towards higher vibrations as well. So I thought that was a very interesting piece, and I just wanted to re-highlight that for the listeners. I don't know if you have anything to add to that, but I thought that was a very interesting piece.
Yeah, because the negative energies exist because we are in duality by choice. That is the energetic environment of this earth, so it has to exist. And energy can neither be cannot be destroyed once it's created. So it's just an energetic expression. And when earth and all of the beings that are on it are finished with experiencing non-duality, sorry, duality, we will come to non-duality, where there is only the vibration of neutrality, joy, peace, and happiness and love. But this is an experience that we have required and requested for our soul growth. So we need to learn compassion and forgiveness. And that is part of the deal with working with the negative energy, because that energy has been created for us to experience. Otherwise, there would be no growth. We would just be blobs just sitting there on a cloud. But duality and non-duality are there for reasons. And yes, we are moving towards non-duality and unconditional love, but we're not there yet, so I can't tell you what it's like. But yes, there is light, because everything is created by the creator. So it creates. I saw a fascinating, sorry to just give you an example, but I saw a fascinating reel on Facebook the other day. I think it's on Conscious Radio Network's Facebook page, something to do with that, where they showed you energetically a scan of a sperm entering into an egg, right? The moment of fertilization. So it was like a thermal energy detector. And the moment the sperm goes into the egg, light is created. So it's this big, like, explosion of light, right? So the point is, there is light in everything, and you need the dark to create. The darkness doesn't get destroyed, it just gets transformed.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for that. I know I wanted to touch on your work with the archangels and helping people find their soul's happy moments, but I think that deserves its own episode because I have so many questions regarding your work with archangels, and you've kind of mentioned it throughout our discussion so far. So would love to have you back on the show to talk about that more in depth. But I think we've had such an amazing conversation about your work in spirit releasement therapy, and I really hope that it's helpful to listeners. And if you're listening and you have more questions, please send them in to me, and maybe we can have a part 2 of this particular discussion as well. But to kind of close out the show, I always ask the final question, which is, have you shifted in perspective on anything recently? And it could be as lighthearted or as deep as you would like it to be.
Yeah, love. So in order to do the next level of sessions regarding infinite love, which I've been asked and guided to do, I had to remove a blockage in my own heart for love. So yes, and I saw it as a physical stone, which was turquoise and pyrite. And I had I healed that myself. to bring myself into the greater vibration of love so that I could then help humans explore the next level, which is infinite love. So yes, that's unfolding for me, and it helps me check in and resonate and answer questions from a place of love rather than a place of fear. So yeah, it changes daily for me.
That's beautiful, and I'm happy for you, and I hope that you continue on that path in a positive way. Where can people find you if they want to learn more about your work or work with you?
Sure. So if you go to my website, which is just katische.com, that's got the links to my podcast, which is all the case studies, and my socials on there. So just katische.com.
Beautiful. And I'll link everything in the show notes. Thank you again, Katish, for stopping by Shifting Dimensions. And I look forward to our future conversations as well.
Thank you. Namaste.